All right, we're just about to move on to Fortescue Metals. They have had some flight issues this morning, so unfortunately Elizabeth can't be here in person, so we have adjusted to bring her to you virtually. So just as a quick introduction, Elizabeth has led Fortescue as a CEO and Executive Director since February 2018, after joining the executive team as CFO in Feb 2017. And serving on the board as a non-exec director since 2013. A highly experienced business leader with extensive international experience as a CEO. She has a very impressive track record in delivering financial and operational excellence. So, sorry for the slight delay there, Elizabeth. Over to you.
No problem, thanks, Brett. And good morning, everybody. I'll just repeat my apologies for being unable to join you in person at Diggers this morning. The weather in Perth is particularly bad, and unfortunately flights have been cancelled out of Perth this morning. But I would like to pass on my thanks to the organisers who have worked quickly this morning to enable me to participate virtually. I acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land of where I am at present, the Wadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging. And I also extend this respect to other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining today. And as many of you may be aware, at the end of this month, I'll be transitioning from my role as Chief Executive Officer to a non-executive director and a newly created role as Fortescue Future Industries Global Ambassador. So it's very fitting that my last public speaking engagement as CEO is at Diggers, having participated in this event for the past 4 years. And it's also my last opportunity to provide my annual Diggers Diversity Index, but more on that a little later. I joined Fortescue almost 10 years ago as a non-executive director before becoming Chief Financial Officer in 2017. And 1 year later, I was privileged to be appointed the company's third CEO. And over the past decade, I've been part of Fortescue's incredible journey, watching the company go from strength to strength to now be one of the world's lowest cost iron ore producers. And it's been a period of incredible transformation, none more so than right now as Fortescue transitions to an integrated global green energy and resources company, together with Fortescue Future Industries. Fortescue's remarkable growth over the past 19 years has been a result of our constant momentum, driving our costs down from almost $50 per tonne to our current industry-leading cost position. And today we're seeking to replicate this momentum as we look to a green energy future. We're now shipping at an annual rate of over 180 million tonnes, and since 2008, Fortescue has delivered over 1.7 billion tonnes of iron ore to our customers. And we're not going to sit on our success. We're going to capitalise on it for our next venture, green energy and decarbonisation technology for heavy emitters like Fortescue. Last week, we released our June 2022 quarterly production report, with the Fortescue team delivering outstanding operational performance for the June quarter, with record iron ore shipments of 49.5 million tonnes. And this contributed to record FY22 shipments of 189 million tonnes, exceeding the top end of guidance. We maintained our industry-leading cost position of $15.91 a tonne, which was supported by an ongoing focus on productivity gains through innovation and technology. And these results were achieved in a challenging operating environment due to the impact of COVID-19, as well as severe inflationary pressures, including soaring diesel costs resulting from the conflict in Ukraine. So let me introduce you to some members of our Fortescue family who have delivered these outstanding results. There is no secret that our success would not be possible without the hard work and dedication of our people, who show their commitment to our strong culture and values every day.
To be truly innovative, we must challenge the status quo. At Fortescue, we are always generating new ideas, striving to do things better, whilst always keeping our teammates safe. This commitment has ensured we're at the forefront of the global resource industry.
Driven by our unique culture and values, Fortescue is now one of the world's lowest cost iron ore producers. And we've done it all while empowering each other and acting with integrity.
Welcome to the Fortescue Hive, our integrated operations centre in Perth, Western Australia. where our team remotely operate our world-leading assets and infrastructure across 3 mining hubs in the Pilbara. Commanding our fleet of autonomous trucks, the world's fastest heavy-haul railway,
our port operations here in Port Hedland, working together to ensure we remain a reliable supplier to our customers.
We're building a diverse, inclusive workplace that reflects our community and ensuring communities benefit from our success by delivering positive social and economic benefits.
Offering Aboriginal people sustainable long-term careers, creating economic opportunities for local businesses, investing in the future of our regions.
Our team is committed to safeguarding our environment, working closely with our native title partners to identify and protect important cultural heritage.
Now, we're using this innovative thinking to fight the most pressing issue of our time, climate change.
We have set industry-leading stretch targets to be carbon neutral by 2030, decarbonising our operations by investing in renewable energy and green technologies to eliminate the use of diesel.
With Fortescue Future Industries, we are setting out to become the world's leading energy and green products company, building on our track record of developing major projects to support the world's transition to green energy.
Driving economic growth and creating jobs in Australia and around the globe. Making a better tomorrow for the people that matter to us most.
Because when innovation is needed to change the world, Fortescue is the future.
It's been an immense privilege to have steered the company over the past 4.5 years. And I've overseen the team's achievement of significant milestones, including one of the largest fleet conversions to autonomous haulage in the industry, with more than 190 autonomous haulage trucks now operating across our Chichester and Solomon operations. And I've also seen the opening of Fortescue's Integrated Operations Centre in Perth, where I'm very proud to say that 50% of our employees are women. And there's been the construction and commencement of operations at our Eliwana mine site, which includes a new 30 million tonne per annum dry ore processing facility and 143 kilometres of additional rail. The team achieved first ore through the OPF in December 2020, which was no mean feat when you consider that earlier that year, construction was just ramping up as the COVID-19 pandemic was sweeping across the globe and restrictions in WA were coming into effect. And we're incredibly proud to have Fortescue's first Aboriginal General Manager, Rosalie Wheelock, at the helm at Eliwana today. The ramp-up and successful integration of Eliwana has contributed to Fortescue's record performance, despite industry-wide and global headwinds. And to give that some context, in FY19, Fortescue shipped 168 million tonnes of iron ore, which is around 20 million tonnes below our shipments in FY22, and clearly demonstrates the value that has been created year on year. And this is the result of the team's commitment to operational excellence and production efficiency, which together with the successful integration of Eliwana has delivered strong growth in Fortescue's production and shipments. This track record of operational excellence and disciplined capital allocation has generated considerable value for our shareholders. Fortescue's total shareholder return, so that's the share price appreciation and the dividends paid, is approximately 600% since the start of financial year 19, and that represents an annual equivalent return of over 60%. Dividends paid to shareholders over this period total $7.46 per share, and that's the equivalent to 23 billion Australian dollars. And that return of 600% compares to a total return of 30% for the ASX 200 index and about 45% for the ASX 100 Resources Index over that same 4-year period. And then there's Ironbridge, our major iron ore growth project with our joint venture partner Formosa, which is one of the few iron ore growth projects globally under development. Ironbridge will lead the way for magnetite operations in Western Australia and will ensure magnetite is a significant contributor to the state's economy for decades to come. And our guidance for Ironbridge is for capital expenditure in the range of $3.6 to $3.8 billion, with first production scheduled for the March 2023 quarter. Importantly, since the company's establishment in 2003, we've seen the enormous benefits that Fortescue's success has provided to our communities. And this is evident through initiatives such as our Billion Opportunities program, which has resulted in more than $4 billion in contracts and subcontractors being awarded to Aboriginal businesses since the initiative was launched in 2011. And there's our Vocational Training and Employment Centre program, also known as VTEC, which continues to provide significant employment opportunities for Aboriginal people. More than 1,000 Aboriginal people have graduated from Fortescue's VTEC program and have gone on to commence full-time employment with Fortescue. VTEC graduate and Bunjima woman Kiralee Lockyer completed the program in June, and she's recently commenced her first full-time job with Fortescue as a mining operator trainee. Kiralee was inspired to apply for VTEC after seeing her brother's success from completing the program. And I firmly believe that it's training and education that drives sustainable change in people's lives, their careers, and their communities. And it's stories like Kiralee's that demonstrate how this pioneering program continues to empower generational change for Aboriginal people. And finally, one of the achievements I'm most proud of is our boldest and our most important target yet, and that is to achieve carbon neutrality by 2030, which is 2 decades earlier than commitments made by most of the mining industry globally. For our size and scale, there is no other mining company in the world that is taking the action we are to eliminate emissions. And we know that it's when heavy emitters like us take action that it makes the biggest difference. We plan to have Fortescue's operations running on green energy within the next 8 years, and that includes our haul trucks, our iron ore trains, and our power stations. Last year, Fortescue's Scope 1 and 2 emissions were 2.2 million tonnes of carbon dioxide equivalent, and that's around 70% of those emissions are generated from our haul trucks and our other heavy mobile equipment, as well as our rail operations. And there's about 1/4 of our emissions that come from stationary power used to run our OPFs and our camps. In addition to our industry-leading target for Scope 1 and 2 emissions, we've also set a target to achieve net zero Scope 3 emissions by 2040, addressing emissions across our entire value chain. And to put that into context, in FY21, our Scope 3 emissions were 252 million tonnes of carbon dioxide equivalent, which highlights the significant task ahead. And there is no doubt that climate change is our collective greatest challenge, and we must not make the climate crisis worse by making the wrong decisions now. In 1950, the world emitted 6 billion tonnes of carbon dioxide. And by 1990, this had almost quadrupled, reaching more than 22 billion tonnes. And more than 3 decades on, the world now emits over 34 billion tonnes of carbon dioxide every year. The solution? It's all of us in attendance today. The solution is industry. Industry must change its business model from producing emissions to reducing and eliminating emissions. And that is what Fortescue is doing. And we will share what we learn with industry across the world so that they can follow our lead. Together with Fortescue Future Industries, we're investing significantly in renewable energy and new technologies, not only to remove our reliance on fossil fuels, but because it makes long-term business sense. We've established a research and development facility at Hazelmere in Perth, where our green team are putting in place the building blocks to turn Fortescue green. And this includes the development of a world-first infinity train, which will use gravitational energy to recharge its battery electric systems without any additional charging requirements. And this will accelerate Fortescue's race to reach net zero emissions by 2030, while also lowering our operating costs and creating maintenance efficiencies and generating productivity improvements. Global heavy equipment manufacturer Liebherr are also partnering with Fortescue to develop and supply green mining haul trucks for integration with our zero-emission power system technologies. And in fact, the first of our green haul trucks will be operational at our sites by 2025. And this builds on our acquisition earlier this year of UK-based Williams Advanced Engineering, which will supply the technology and power systems to decarbonise our green fleet in collaboration with FFI and Liebherr. There's no doubt that the energy landscape has changed dramatically since the Russian invasion of the Ukraine in February. Energy security is now the world's greatest concern. However, we cannot allow the energy crisis to exacerbate the climate crisis. 12 months ago, the cost of crude oil was around $70 a barrel, and this is in comparison to recent levels of over $100. And I don't have to tell anyone in the room the impact this is having on both the direct and indirect cost of production. We're all facing significant inflationary pressures, which impacts our margins. And in fact, this could get even worse given the current geopolitical environment. So it's imperative for all of us to accelerate our transition to green energy and reduce our reliance on fossil fuels so that we can protect and maintain our cost base and our margins. And we're seeing increased demand for the supply of green energy, particularly to Europe. And that's demonstrated by our recent MOU with E.ON, one of Europe's largest operators of energy networks and energy infrastructure, to deliver up to 5 million tonnes per annum of green hydrogen to Europe by 2030. This is a significant opportunity, not only for Fortescue, but for Australia. And green energy will ensure energy independence. When I was appointed CEO of Fortescue, media coverage often highlighted my gender, that I was the first female CEO of the company. And in fact, at the time, there were more male CEOs of ASX-listed companies named John or David than there were female CEOs of ASX-listed companies. And unfortunately, little has changed since then. Looking at the speakers list for this 3-day event, 5 out of the 71 speakers are women. So in other words, that equates to just 7%. And clearly, this is not representative of our society or even our industry. And I think, in fact, today I'm the only female speaker out of 26. And over this 3-day event, you will hear from more speakers who have the name Mark and Peter than you will from women. And I've made these observations before. However, noting that this is my last Diggers, I trust that Christy Batten will carry on the legacy of the Diggers Diversity Index. And if you'd asked me at the start of my professional career whether I thought I would still be talking about gender diversity in 2022, I would have thought that we would be living it by now. And unfortunately, the reality is that we're still having the same conversations about equality that we had 30, 20, and 10 years ago. Change has been hard fought and slow, and the equal representation that we all hoped we would have achieved by now has not eventuated. And we cannot be complacent and assume that diversity is going to happen by accident. I'm proud that Fortescue is one of the few large ASX-listed companies with women comprising half of our board. And we know that diversity delivers the best results. It's not just the right thing to do, it's the smart thing to do. And as companies, we all have a responsibility to ensure as many women as possible have the opportunity to participate in and make a strong contribution to the resources sector. Just last week, Fortescue was recognised for the 3rd consecutive year as among the best companies globally for women to advance, with our inclusion in the 2022 Best Companies for Women to Advance list. And in 2019, we were also one of the first companies in Australia to sign the Parity Pledge, which brings gender equality to the highest levels of business by committing to interview at least one qualified woman for every executive position. Like many of you, I was deeply concerned by the findings from the parliamentary inquiry into sexual harassment at mining operations in Western Australia. And it's no accident that the title of the report is Enough is Enough. Fortescue has a strong culture that is built on integrity and respect, and we're committed to ensuring that we're providing a safe and inclusive work environment. And we acknowledge that we, as an organisation contributing to the wider community, can always do more. And as an industry, we must ensure we have a workplace that is reflective of our community, which fosters a workplace culture that truly embraces diversity and inclusiveness. And it's critical that we use forums such as Diggers to set the standard. The industry still has some work to do if we're to achieve generational change when it comes to diversity in the resources sector. And I know that as an industry, we can and we must do better. If we can be among the best in the world at innovation and integrating artificial intelligence into mining, then we should also be the best at capitalising on human intelligence. Research has shown that more women in key decision-making positions delivers better company performance, greater productivity, and greater profitability. And while women are progressing into management roles at a faster rate than men, we're still some 80 years away from seeing an equal share of women in the position of CEO. And I don't know about you, but for me, that is simply too long. And I'd like to see change far sooner than that. We all know that the mining sector is no longer just high vis and big trucks, it's high tech. The the introduction of innovation and technology has changed the mining sector significantly. It's now a high technology industry requiring skills that are in high demand. And there's intense demand for people with skills in statistics, analytics, robotics, and artificial intelligence, which is why it's more important than ever that we equip the workforce of the future for these types of jobs and that we attract the best and brightest minds from across the diversity of our population. So in closing, when the mining industry is strong, all Australians benefit. And in financial year 21, the mining industry contributed a record $43 billion in company taxes and royalties. And that was up 16% from the previous year. Fortescue alone contributed $8 billion. The sector also provides significant employment opportunities. It pays the highest average wages, delivers the most export revenue, and is critical to supporting regions and communities. And it's an industry that I'm very proud to be part of. And as an industry, we've coped with significant challenges, with the tragic collapse of the Brumadinho Dam in Brazil in 2019, which saw the mining and resources sector globally unite to set a new industry standard of tailings management. And there was the tragedy of the destruction of Juukan Gorge in 2020, which accelerated the modernisation of Western Australia's 50-year-old Aboriginal heritage legislation that will, among other things, result in an increased emphasis on agreement making between proponents of land developments and traditional custodians. And we've also seen the impacts of climate change close to home as floods, fires and heat waves impact our country. And of course, we've navigated through a global pandemic. So we must remain focused and maintain momentum. We have to continue to innovate and to be at the forefront of cutting edge technology. We have to reduce emissions and decarbonise, and we have to build greater diversity across the mining sector. And you've heard from a number of speakers already who have highlighted the opportunities for the mining industry as demand accelerates for key commodities that support global decarbonisation and the energy transition. And now is the time to get on with it. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Great presentation, Elizabeth, and not easy with the flight disruption this morning. We do have about a minute for questions from the room, if anyone wants to raise their hand with a question. If not, I have one. I can't see anything out there. So I actually did speak to Wellesley over the weekend to get some smart questions for you, Elizabeth, but this is a longer dated one. What does decarbonisation by 2030 do for FMG relative to your peer group, and how far ahead do you think you will be versus those peers?
Yeah, look, a great question. I think for all of us in the industry, if we're not serious about decarbonisation, then those that aren't doing it will face some real challenges. You've only got to look at the cost of energy, the reliability and security of supply of energy to see the volatility recently and the impact it's having for all of us across our cost base. And you could envisage a world where the oil price rises to even higher levels and puts enormous pressure on costs and margins. You could also envisage a world where a carbon charge is introduced, or if you're a company that's relying on offsets to meet your emissions reduction targets, you could see the cost of those offsets increase significantly. So everybody has set emissions reduction targets. To align with the Paris Agreement, you must set emission reduction targets. But if you're not doing something really practical about it and you think, well, I'll rely on offsets, then, as I said, you could see your cost base increase significantly. So relative to, I guess, others in the industry, we're taking a practical approach. We're getting on with it. We plan to eliminate the use of diesel across our operations. We know that will give us a real cost advantage. Importantly, we will reduce emissions. We're not going to do it through other means like offsets. We're actually going to actively reduce emissions. So there's the benefits we're going to see across our cost base. I think it future-proofs us from a risk perspective. And also we expect that our customers will pay a premium for a product that is truly green and is produced free of emissions. So there's revenue benefits and cost benefits, and I think it does mitigate a significant risk that we may all face in the next decade.
That's great, Elizabeth. Thank you very much for your time. We've just run out of time, guys. I apologise. So you can go to the booth if you want to follow up. I hope.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.